I'm delighted to welcome Catriona Wolfenden to another episode of the Business of AI podcast. So, Catriona, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thanks for having me, Tim.
It's great to have you here. And I'd like to get started by hearing a bit about your background. So, could you tell us a bit about how you came to be doing what you're doing now, and also then explain a bit about what Weightmans does?
Yep, certainly. So Weightmans is a top 40 law firm. So we're a full service law firm, do a bit of kind of every type of law. And my job at the moment is Director of Product and Innovation. So I was previously a lawyer and have squiggled my way around many different legal jobs before ending up in knowledge management. So kind of giving the advice on specific legal matters. And then started an innovation department about 7 or 8 years ago now. And now head up a team of about 34 of us doing products and innovation for our clients.
Fantastic. And when you talk about innovation, you must have to deal with or have had dealings with lots of companies who are really pioneering new technology. Can you give us a bit of a flavour of some of the businesses, some of the interesting businesses you've worked with, and some of the challenges about innovation?
Yeah, so I think, innovation, people possibly don't think lawyers are necessarily that innovative by, I suppose, nature. If you look back historically, it was all very pen and paper based, wasn't it? And, almost scares lawyers the thought of being innovative. But I suppose law at its very core is a prime example, isn't it, of innovation. Every day lawyers are pushing and testing the boundaries of case law, of legislation, coming up with different ways of applying that to a set of facts or to benefit their client. And I suppose innovation in a law firm is just the next natural step for that. So it's really trying to push lawyers out of that thinking that it's just, swapping a bit of case law and that kind of thing into thinking and taking that problem solving mindset into, the way we help clients, the way we give kind of business advice and that kind of thing. And, over the years we've worked with, many different companies, some literally kind of 2 people just starting up, literally almost, from a bedroom wanting to develop tools and that kind of thing, right the way up to the really big technology companies and kind of everybody in between, really. And yeah, they bring, I suppose, for, rightly so, a heavily regulated environment, they bring a lot of challenges for trying to get, them through pilots, to make sure all the risk and the information security side of it is all fenced off. But it also offers, great opportunities to allow us to develop, diversify, offer different kind of skills and services to our clients, which is ultimately what we're there to do.
Yeah, fantastic. So the legal profession, I suppose, there's got 2 parts of it that deal with technology. One is the actually how you can bring technology into your practice and leverage it to make yourselves more efficient. But the other part is advising your clients on how they can deal with some of the challenges around everything, I suppose, from IP through to being able to then ensure as they grow and take on new investors, they're getting all the paperwork on board there, or that sort of thing as well. So which of those do you cover both of those areas, and which of those is kind of most...
So as a firm we cover all of those areas. I tend to stay on the side of, I suppose, looking at internal efficiencies and then actually building technology for clients and kind of servicing their kind of issues that way. So we've got whole teams of brilliant lawyers dealing with copyright and IP and all those really kind of fun and quite knotty issues for those kind of clients. But we really work with them to try and understand, I suppose, what their problems are. And quite often, the problem that somebody presents with may not actually be the ultimate problem and the kind of the cause of what they're trying to achieve. And really trying to get under the skin with the client, looking at kind of people and process and the best way of exploring that and solving that for them. So we sell software to clients just as a different way of delivering legal services and to help them mitigate risk, which is, the job of a lawyer, isn't it, is to either get somebody out of a problem or to stop that happening in the first place. So that kind of risk mitigation piece as well, really important to us and our clients.
Yeah. Interesting. You mentioned you created some software there. I'm fascinated by what kind of software that would be and how you generated, how you came up with those types of solutions.
Yeah. So I suppose, again, really knowing and understanding our clients. So we've got 2 really great examples of that, Tim, one in the employment space and one in the lorry regulation space. And both of them came about by two brilliant lawyers really understanding their client and their client's problems. So that first employment piece, we've got a disability discrimination tool that's used by clients to help them really, when they're having those kind of conversations with employees, make sure they're following the legal procedure. And this was a really big client, and we could see from the data that actually disability discrimination was an area where they were frequently having employment tribunals claims brought against them. So we decided to work with them and to see if we could understand kind of why that was and if we could help prevent that. And we've come up with a tool that's built into their HR system now, that when any one of their thousands of HR managers is dealing with that type of case with an employee, the tool is triggered, it guides them all the way through the process and making sure they're following their internal processes, making sure that's following the law. And again, most importantly, that there's a record of it. Half of being a good lawyer is, is there a bit of paper that says not only what you've done, but that you've checked it and all of that kind of thing. And quite often that's, what is lacking in cases. So this is kind of a contemporaneous record of all of those steps taken, so that ultimately if a claim is brought against them, they can show, time and date stamped, these were all the actions we took, these were the conversations and the meetings and stuff we had. And again, a similar tool in the lorry regulation space. So, got a great team of lawyers who are really adept at dealing with issues before the traffic commissioner. So this is really, quite literally when the lorries hit the bridge or the wheel has come off, that kind of thing, and caused issues to get them before the traffic commissioner. And again, it's that risk mitigation piece, isn't it? No business sets off to want to go before the traffic commissioner. And it's all about those kind of checks and those routines you can put in place to stop that. So the tool used by, multiple clients, by their transport managers, to check that every 6 to 8 weeks, whatever the frequency is, that all their, their lorries and vehicles meet all the requirements, the legal requirements are set up on them. And again, you've got that contemporaneous record. If there's an issue with the lorry, it triggers a warning, it triggers, some other steps to take, so that they're very aware, and that can be escalated internally within a client. So kind of, some manager can oversee that if there's multiple depots. So really trying to stop, in that scenario, clients actually getting before the traffic commissioner. And, legal spend, it's quite often, isn't it, reactionary, it's an uncertain spend for clients. So, rather than have to kind of put that pot of money aside for, if the lorry does hit the bridge, being able to offer subscription legal services to actually hopefully prevent them from getting in that position in the first place.
Great. And those are really good examples, I think, of how you started with the problem and helped your clients to understand them, and then came up with a solution which was using a very appropriate type of technology to solve each of those individual cases. One word or two words that we haven't mentioned so far is AI. And I'd be interested to get your perspective on how you've seen this come into those solutions that you provide for your clients. I imagine over the last few years, it's become something that more people are talking about now, but I'd love to get your perspective.
Yeah, I mean, you certainly can't move at the moment, can you, for kind of Gen AI conversations? And, we've had AI conversations for many years before that. And I think we're calling it now good old fashioned AI, aren't we? I think it's now that old and taken over by Gen AI. But, lots of good old fashioned AI solves very good, particular problems. Those particular tools at the moment don't have any Gen AI in them, largely because they don't need to at the moment. So we've always kind of taken the approach of being tech agnostic and problem solving. So starting absolutely with the problem first, rather than saying, we've got a bit of tech, how can we force that into something? Because I think that gets you a much better outcome. And again, all that diversity of thought and stuff within teams, you don't want them to come into kind of problem solving presupposing what the answer is, because you've only got one particular piece of tech. It's like that old story, isn't it? If you've only got a hammer, everything, is a nail in front of you. And I think it's almost become a bit like that with Gen AI. It's like, we've had loads of weird and wacky requests for Gen AI use cases. And some of it's actually, even a good old fashioned spreadsheet solves some of the problems. And I think it's almost become just a way of somebody saying, I just need some tech to help me out. And actually, when you start to explore it, there'll be plenty of times where Gen AI is either the full solution or a component to something. But there are very many other pieces of tech, tools, processes within kind of an innovation team's armory. And I think the knack for innovation teams, particularly in professional services, is being able to kind of almost pick and mix those tools. So to have people who are trained across, the whole gambit of technology. Yes, they'll have particular specialisms, but they understand the whole kind of tech ecosystem that's available to them. And then as they're problem solving, you get those really kind of, almost eureka moments where they go, oh, it's a bit of that, it's a bit of this, and we can join it together. And then for the client, it's a seamless experience. So, very much a kind of look at the problem first. My boss Stu will always say, if you don't solve the process first and you chuck technology at it, all you get is faster chaos. And that's, very much the position neither us or clients want to be on. So really going back to basics, looking at, client processes, internal processes, and almost thinking, well, if we were starting today from scratch, would this actually be the way we'd do it? Is there a better way? Is there a way of combining things? Some things may be too big to start entirely again, but where can we tweak? Where can we, have an agent that does something, or a calculator bit that does something, or where can we pull data from other systems just to kind of streamline that process for our lawyers and clients?
Yeah, I love that phrase, faster chaos. And I think that's a really good way of looking at it, because you're absolutely right that so many people now are racing to the solution. They just want AI without really thinking about what the problem is that they have in the business and what might be the most appropriate technology to solve that. So absolutely, and you framed that really well. The other bit which you touched upon, which I wanted to sort of dig into a little bit, is the sort of the role of the human here as well, because actually, the human is often part of the I'm going to say part of the challenge, but also part of the solution, right?
Yeah, definitely.
There's a sort of organizational challenge. Humans, but that's historical. That's just how we are as humans, right? But then there's also humans can be very innovative, very, very creative as well. So how are you sort of building teams within Weightmans that allow you to have the right skills to be able to kind of deliver this solution-based for your clients?
Yeah, I think, the role of a lawyer and that expertise, I think, will be, here for many years to come. I don't think we're about to see the march of the robot lawyer anytime soon to kind of displace that. But I think, internally we start to talk more about diverse teams. And with that, we don't mean, a corporate lawyer, a commercial lawyer, or an IP lawyer. We mean a data scientist, a legal engineer, a marketing colleague, somebody from finance, and the lawyer. And that's the kind of mixed, diverse team that more and more we're taking to clients. So it's not just kind of a room full of lawyers. I suppose it's almost the lawyer is the introduction almost to the clients, to the particular problem, obviously helps frame the legal aspect of the solution. But quite often, mixing knowledge management, mixing data services, mixing my product and innovation team to kind of almost bubble up those ideas and to see, very different ways of maybe dealing with that. And then trying to, I suppose, iterate really quickly around that so that you can, give some minimal viable product back either internally or to a client so they can physically see something, and whether that might be a way of solving it for them. But yeah, I mean, the people side of product and innovation and, AI, Gen AI in general is a massive part of my time and my team's time. Change, and this is, so it's just a different type of change, isn't it? Change in kind of any organization, can be difficult. Nobody particularly likes change. Even working in change, you don't necessarily like change done to you. And you're really trying to get busy people, who've always worked in a particular way, who are experts at something, to want to do something a bit different or to use a different piece of technology or whatever that might be, and trying to get people to, raise their heads from their day job is quite difficult. So the way we've gone about it in Weightmans is we've specifically given people that kind of objective and crucially the time, because that's usually in professional service firms is the biggest kind of issue is, if it's not in my objectives and, the day job is taking precedence, I've got, files and stuff, I haven't got the time to do it. So we've purposefully freed up partners and senior people within the team to be product and innovation partners, where 60% of their time is now actually doing product and innovation. And then 40% of their time is doing whatever their day job might be. So some might have been client relationship partners, some might be, team managers, just very good technical lawyers. And again, part of that, I suppose, is selfishly, both me and Stuart were both former lawyers. But the last time we handled a file, Tim, you wouldn't want us anywhere near them now. And our kind of connection with, what actually happens on the ground, gets ever more distant as the year goes on. So we want to have people who've got that foot in both camps. So that's why it's not 100% role. It's really important for us that they've still got that client contact, that team contact, that context of what happens, day to day, but also that they're empowered and have the time, and the majority of their time to do product and innovation. And they face off to each of our kind of external segments as well. So, really expert in that particular area for clients.
And what's the dynamic like in an organization where you're trying to sort of build these more diverse teams? I've had some conversations with other people in the legal profession where they've said, there's often a group of partners who are maybe quite senior, they've come up through the ranks, and they're sort of they're less interested in innovating. But then you've got sort of like younger generations, particularly the sort of like the recent graduates are coming in to the space, who are much more sort of technology native, and there's a sort of almost like a clash of cultures within some organizations. Do you find that, and how have you adapted for that?
Yeah, so I think I've been really lucky. So Weightmans has always backed this kind of, well, now it's included in our purpose, that kind of see the possibility, that do something different. And I think, I was made a partner really early doing this kind of work. I've recently been made an equity partner. So, really at the decision table. Thanks, Tim. Really at the decision table for these kind of big topics, which I think, again, is really important. So, absolutely, they've led from the top and they put the money where their mouth is and supported this as a kind of thing, which I think is really important. So for us, it's not just a side hustle. It's not just let's buy a bit of shiny tech and announce to the world that we've adopted something that, two people maybe use. This is actually central to how we think law firms of the future will succeed. So that side of it, that kind of cultural side, there's always some people out there who are a bit less keen on things and stuff than others. And that's just human nature. That's part of kind of general change. I think the biggest way to deal with that, and the best way we've found, is that kind of, it's the fear of missing out, isn't it? Nobody wants to think, no lawyer, especially no partner, wants to think different lawyers' clients are getting something that theirs aren't. So, you kind of pick your battles, don't you? So you work with the ones at the beginning who are really keen on this kind of thing, and you work really closely with them to get stuff out to their clients and to get that kind of positive feedback, those award wins, that kind of thing. And that then kind of trickle effect, people who've previously not been that interested suddenly, kind of don't want to miss out. So that's the way we've dealt with that aspect. The other bit, Tim, is really quite interesting. And I think, lots of, professional service firms and kind of, firms and companies in general are dealing with this, that kind of, young entrance into a world of work, and then the kind of existing employment force. And it's a very different way of trying to get them to engage. So I've got a 10-year-old at the moment. He's at the local primary school. They get taught how to code. They have all kinds of computer lessons. He's going to come into the world of work, 8-9 years or whatever, absolutely knowing how to deal with this tech. They want mobile phones and all of that kind of thing. It's very much taught to them. And again, we've got apprentices coming in at 18, absolutely digitally native. That's the only kind of thing they know. So they're very au fait with the technology, with the Gen AI, publicly available tools of this world. But then they don't have that kind of wider business and risk context and understanding to necessarily know when you should and when you shouldn't use stuff, or what you should or shouldn't put into these systems, and why it's an issue if it's backed up in a certain country, or if somebody can hack your prompts out and that kind of thing. So it's trying to get them almost upskilled on the wider kind of business side of an organization, whilst not trying to dampen their enthusiasm for the tech. And then the other way, really, it's, I suppose, with, we're different generational workforces now, aren't we? So trying to explain to people. There was quite interesting Law Society research, which I suppose shows what we've probably all known for many years, that to sell the benefits of legal tech, you have to almost personally explain to every individual lawyer what the personal benefit for them is. So not just, hey, you know, as a team or as a department or whatever, this will save you time, but actually individual lawyer A, you use this piece of technology, it'll knock 2 hours off your day, you're now not logging on in the evening or whatever that might be. And that obviously is a very different kind of approach to trying to keep the enthusiasm for tech of more junior colleagues whilst explaining the world of work and risk to them. But yeah, we've tried many different ways, and again, you know, it's all part of kind of change management and cycles, isn't it? It's trying to meet people where they are, and I suppose, you know, keep telling my team it's never personal. You know, that people do have very different attitudes to tech, clients have very different attitudes to tech. And again, it's a bit like painting the fourth road bridge, really. You can't stop doing it. So you explain it one way, it might not stick, they might not be interested, it might not be the right time. You know, you do another round of road shows or webinars or whatever it is, 6 months later, actually, the same almost message lands better that time, and suddenly there's an opportunity. So, you know, I think it's that almost resilience piece to keep going with it as well.
Yeah, resilience is definitely an underrated characteristic. Yeah, to keep all of the sort of
keep going, keep peddling the same message. And again, I suppose it's tag teaming out, isn't it? And you know, we've all got people we like best at work, or you know, you'd fight to work with kind of thing. And you know, we're quite lucky now as a really, you know, quite a sizable team, that we've all got different favorites. So it's a bit like play to your strengths, and people who are better with, you know, one type of personality or kind of group, or have a connection with them. So again, you know, don't think it's only kind of you who can be the one to deal with this. You know, really kind of play to a team's strengths and sub people in and out, because sometimes it's just that it's that different story, it's that different message, it's that different connection that, you know, I've got, you know, lawyers and stuff in the team that, you know, oh, I used to do that and now I use this and it's, you know, made my day better kind of thing. It's just, it's that personal connection as well that sometimes can really help.
Well, it's really interesting to hear you talk about diversity before as well, diversity of teams, from the perspective of the experience and the skills, and also now what you're talking about in terms of that sort of that mindset and the different sort of personalities almost that come in, because that forces the collective team then to see things from many different perspectives and brings together all that expertise to ultimately create a better solution for that team there. But I also wanted to sort of, you know, ask around the sort of, what does this mean for the new generation coming in? Because it sounds like, you know, your team is quite sort of switched on, and you're really quite sort of far thinking ahead in terms of the way in which organisations should be structured. But there's a lot of concern out there, and I imagine in other law firms, where young people are coming in or finishing university and they're thinking, well, is there going to be a role for me in law? Because they're reading all these stories about how technology, including AI, is maybe going to be taking away some of the roles which historically the younger generation have done in order to become the more experienced generation. So what's your perspective on how that will change?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm sat, you know, in a job that didn't exist as I started my legal career. You know, there weren't innovation roles in law firms. There weren't people getting partnership off the back of innovation roles. And now there's a whole kind of cohort of us at, you know, many different types and sizes of law firms that have. So, you know, as I said almost at the beginning, you know, lawyers are very good at adapting, aren't we? We're very good at adapting to, you know, changing markets, budgets, different political, you know, scenarios. We're good at kind of pivoting and adapting. And I think innovation really is just the next kind of iteration of that, isn't it? So, you know, I think what will happen at the more junior end, I think those who are coming into the profession much more open-minded, and I suppose not fixated on, I want to be this exact type of lawyer and that's all I'm going to do, you know, day to day, I think will probably ultimately fare much better. I think that kind of open-mindedness and that ability to think, well, you know, this is what the current, you know, year or next couple of years might look like, but actually, you know, who knows what the world will look like? There will be a lot of change, and who are open to that kind of idea almost of, you know, it's a squiggly career, isn't it? Not necessarily even being in the same type of area of law. So I kind of jumped about all different kinds of areas of law, I think will probably fare better. And I think that kind of, again, we're trying to train, so we have our own apprenticeship and trainee solicitor kind of academy that we put them through for tech innovation, problem solving. And that's run on kind of like a yearly basis. And actually, it's only the last quarter that really focuses on tech, because the rest of it is people, process change, all of those good kind of fun stuff that actually is the bedrock for doing any of this. And to try and get them to be tech agnostic, because the systems that we all use, you know, will come and go. There'll be, you know, whether that be, you know, almost back office systems, or whether that is the next Gen AI or whatever we might get after that. But really to understand, I suppose, the capability of technology rather than a particular piece of technology. So they can almost kind of swap that out interchangeably. And again, I suppose a real big focus on the people side, Tim. So the kind of the people skills, you know, you always query, don't you, how much a lawyer actually learned by reading the same set of leases over and over again in an office till God knows when at night, because that was the task to be done, you know, that kind of whole learning by osmosis. And I think what will happen is junior lawyers will just get harder technically cases much earlier on than they traditionally would have done, because maybe the technology, you know, we've got document review systems, haven't we, e-discovery, all of that kind of tech, which is already shifted, you know, what's a lot of the roles that junior lawyers would have spent, you know, days reviewing, you know, leases or contracts to pull out data. Now the technology does that in seconds. So they'll get those kind of harder technical cases. And then quite often the corollary of that is it's harder on a kind of a business, a personal and emotional side, those kinds of clients. So it's making sure that we upskill our junior workforce to be able to deal with the whole gambit of complexity that's going to come at them, not just kind of the legal side of it, because I think that will come much earlier, I suspect, than people have traditionally, or certainly that I had it in my career.
Yeah. Yeah, great. Thank you for giving us that perspective. It's really useful to see how the opportunities there. I think there are still a number of opportunities for people to be able to sort of find these roles. And you're right, it actually means that those younger lawyers will get access to more interesting cases earlier on. So it means they don't have to do some of that work, which probably wasn't going to add in that much to their skills.
Yeah, or they'll just be more hybrid roles. So there'll be, you know, I've got legal engineers who've got legal backgrounds, science backgrounds, you know, politics, history backgrounds, all of that kind of stuff. You know, you've got people, you know, lawyers within teams who want to do these kind of projects and actually, you know, take ownership of them, who see that as their route of progression through a firm and that kind of thing, and see it, you know, as a way of delivering different legal advice. So I think it's trying not to separate out almost innovation from legal advice and services. It's kind of that marrying together. Actually, it's just another way of delivering ultimately, you know, practical, pragmatic, quick advice, which is ultimately what clients want.
Yeah. Just as we start to wrap things up there, and coming back to AI for a moment as well, I wanted to sort of get your perspective on what area of AI are you tracking, are you most interested in? Do you think is going to have the sort of impact on your work in the next year or so?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we can't not mention Gen AI again, can we? I mean, the rate of change and acceleration with that, it's almost every day, isn't there? There's something out. We're talking now, Tim, the day after the Getty judgment on copyright, which we're all ploughing through the 205 pages to kind of unpick that. I think, you know, for law firms, we've used precedent material, haven't we, for what, centuries, you know, even before typewriters, before computers, there were particular clauses and ways of handing them down. And I think it's quite interesting, the technology that marries up that kind of precedent rules-based side of law with the kind of Gen AI on top. I think that's a really interesting way of doing it. So almost not throwing the baby out with the bathwater, all those, you know, carefully amended commas, strikeouts and everything that lawyers love to do, using all that wealth of knowledge and experience in those documents to maybe get you 70 or 80% of the way. And then on the more nuanced or weirder and wackier cases, you know, adding the Gen AI element on top. So I think that technology that fuses them, and there's a couple of commercial examples, I think that's a really interesting space to kind of track over the next year or so.
Interesting. Yes, there's still a lot of ground for companies to be able to apply Gen AI to specific solutions within setting. So great. Well, Catriona, it's been great to have you here. And just as we kind of wrap things up, can you tell us how we could follow the work you're doing at Weightmans, and how can we stay in touch and learn more about your work?
Yep, certainly. So we've got product pages on the Weightmans internet, or we've got LinkedIn is probably the best way of keeping in touch. Or you can buy mine and Stu's books. That's our shameless plug, Tim. We wrote a book about innovation in law firms, which is technology agnostic. So it's all the people, the process, all of that side of it. So hopefully we'll stand people in good stead for many years to come.
Great. What is the book called?
Innovation in Law Firms. We weren't very imaginative with our title, to be fair.
Well, it says what it does on
just
the
what
tin.
it says on the tin, Tim.
Yeah. Brilliant. Well, I'd like to kind of check that out. It sounds like that's the builds on some of the themes we'll be talking about here as well, which sounds really interesting. So thank you so much for spending some time with us to talk us through that. It'd be fascinating. Thank you.